Hello everyone, today we can see learning Python, and today I'll show you when and why you should quit using Lambda in Python. So let's start. But before we start that video, I recommend you subscribing to my Telegram channel. You will find lots of materials, modules, libraries, examples and tasks on Python in my Telegram channel. Also, I post all the announcements there, so if you want to understand what will happen to the channel in the near future, you can go here. And I respond to comments much faster than I do it on YouTube. So subscribe to my Telegram channel, link in the description down below. Well, for those of you who don't know what is Lambda and how to use it, it's better to learn about it and watch my other video. But why you should give up using Lambda? And first of all, I want to point out that you don't need to quit Lambda in every... You can use Lambda. Of course, Lambda is a very great tool. For example, if you don't want to save one-line function, you don't want to write def, func, then, for example, return 10. Of course, that is messy, and if you have 20, 40 of those functions, it's not great at all. But of course, Lambda is a great tool. For example, what you can do is write func equals lambda x and return 10, for example, or without any argument. And yeah, that's a great tool. But actually, what I want to show you why Lambda is not that great. Let's, for example, print that func. So what I do, I just create Lambda function right here and I save it to the variable. It's the same if I would create a defined function and so on. Return 10. Okay, let's run it now, and as you can see, what we have here, we have Lambda, function Lambda at some address. You say, well, that's great, but what if we have two Lambda functions in our code? Func2 equals Lambda from 20, for example. Return, or let's print function 2. Then, as you can see, that's not great at all. Because what we have here, we have function Lambda at some address and another function Lambda at another address. The only thing that you can use to identify what function are you using right now. So for example, if I want to use function func, what I need to do is actually look at its address. So what I need to do is look at that address, and then only after that I will identify that that function belongs to func or func2. Actually, I don't know, because as you can see, we don't have any names, we just have Lambda, because Lambda functions do not have names in Python. And because of that, we can only distinguish them using addresses. But another problem is that address changes every time we run our program, because its address is dynamic. So Python language is dynamic. We don't store it anywhere. We actually give some memory when we run our program, and because of that, we cannot distinguish these functions at all. Where of course you can put like print function, then use that address, function to use that address, but it's not convenient at all. Let's look at the simple function which we have with define. So define func3, and let's return 10, for example. If I'll put func3 at the end of the print, what I'll see? Function func3. And now, as you can see, I understand, as a human, I understand that function, the third output of our print is function 3. And therefore, what I can do, I can debug my programs easily. It's more convenient for me because I can see what is the function 3. And yeah, that's why you should not give up Lambda, but you can omit some functions or you can replace some functions with normal Python functions where you use Lambda, because it will be very hard for you to debug your code, to find bugs and to resolve those problems. Because of that, that's kind of the main problem with Lambda. Lambda do not have names. Func and func2 are just variables, they are not names. Name is func3 inside of define. Okay, now that's an example, and where we can... Okay, I don't want to use Lambda, of course I'll write define, okay, that's great. But what if I need to use Lambda? For example, I have a lot of functions and I don't want to mess up my code with these define return 10, return x plus y functions. So let's go to another example. For example, we have list A. So A, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Then what I want to do is use, for example, print list from map from lambda x, x plus 2, and a, like that. So what is PyCharm? It's lagging. Okay. So now what I can see, what that code does. We have a list 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we print that list. So we print it, and we need to update that list using map. So what map function does? Map function accepts two arguments. The first one is a function, so map function accepts another function as an argument. And as you can see, I provide lambda function which accepts x and adds 2 to that x. Then we accept a container, list, tuple, any iterable in Python. In our case, it's a, so our list. And what it does? Map function, for those of you who don't know what it does, it gets every element. So the first element is 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and it updates your list with the return value of lambda of our function argument. So for example, we get 1, we add 2 to 1, so to the first element, then we add 2 to 2, then we add 3 to 3, we add 2 to 3 and 2 to 4. So I think you understand me. We iterate through every element, and yeah, we just return it. And map returns a generator, and because of that, what we need to do is use list to see the result. And as you can see now, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I will put, for example, 1, just return as 1, we'll always receive 1. That's how it works. And you can say, okay, so what's the problem? I can use lambda functions in here, and yeah, everything is alright. You can use lambda functions, but actually there is a better way to use these simple functions, because x plus 2 is very simple. Or for example, Boolean from x. So in Python, every integer is true except for, or every number is true, it's better to say like that, except for 0. And if I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 0 and use Boolean from x, what I'll receive is true, 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 false, because 1, 2, 3, 4 give me true, and 0 gives me false, because that's just how Python numbers work when we translate them to Boolean. And by the way, Boolean is also an integer. But, okay, Boolean inherits from an integer, but it does not matter today. So what we do here? We simply have a lambda function x, which gives us Boolean from our x, from our element of our iterable, of our array A. But what is the problem with that code? Again, when I would debug my code, and in serious applications, of course, these are just 2 lines, but in serious applications, when you debug your code, you always want to understand what is the function you're calling, what is the method you're using, and so on. But in our case, I can understand or identify that I'm using list, map, Boolean, but I cannot identify what is that function because it does not have a name. It's just a lambda x from Boolean x. Of course, it's very dramatic because if you can see list from map from lambda x and you get the wrong result, for example, you get false, 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 or always false, then you understand that something is wrong with your lambda or with list or map. It's just one line. But if you use lambda functions everywhere, it will be very hard for you to debug your code. That's why in Python we have operator for these simple lambda functions. If you want, you can use, or if you have some serious functions like, I don't know, my func, where you call another function my func from x. But in that case, what you can do is just provide my func, and it will be better, because if you have a serious function that you want to use inside of a map, for example, function that contains 4, 5, 10, 20 lines of code, then what you can do is use my func. But if you are using simple lambda operations in Python, what you can use is operator module. So what operator module contains? Let's actually go inside of it, and if you're using PyCharm, what you can do is press left control and click your left mouse button on that module. So there are lots of things. There is a simple documentation that explains what it does, but as you can see, what we have here, we have a lot of simple one-line functions. Of course, they are not always one line, because as you can see, length, hint, we have a lot of here. We have index of function in here. Yes, ipov, isub. If you watched my video about operators in Python classes, then you understand what I plus some operator means. Okay, so there are also functions, but what it does. Operator module contains functions that are very simple, and these functions are used very often. Because of that, you don't need to write these functions in your own code. So first of all, you don't mess up your code with one-line functions, because all of these functions are contained inside of operator module. Operator module is pre-installed, so you don't want to delete it, and you can just use them from here. So you don't overload your code with stupid one-line functions. But you don't use Lambda inside of map, filter, reduce, and other functions that accept another function as a variable or as an argument. Because of that, what you can do is, for example, our Boolean, so Boolean from X, what we can do is use truth. Let's go right here, and as you can see what it does. Return true if A, else false. Again, actually we can use just Boolean from A, but that's how it's written right here. Maybe it's faster, I don't actually know. But no, I don't think that's faster. I think that's just how it is. Okay, so return truth. What I can do, instead of lambda boolean from X, I can write map from operator truth, and as you can see, it's more convenient for us as a programmers, as a humans to read that. But also, when we'll debug our program, when we'll look at the logs of our program, we'll see that we have truth, not just function lambda at address, but operator or function built-in's truth. Let's run it now, and as you can see, the result is the same. But if I'll just print operator dot truth, truth like that, not rediff, truth, then what I'll receive is built-in function truth. That's actually how it works. So we don't use lambda functions, we use normal named functions in Python, and that's why we can debug, work with our programs a lot easier. But what I want to do is show you, for example, operator add. That function just adds two variables. So for example, operator add from 1 to, let's run it, and as you can see we have 3. But you don't want to use them like that. So b equals operator add 1 2, because that's just not how Python works. What you can do is use 1 plus 2. You want to use operator functions only when you want to use, or when you can use simple lambda functions. And before you write any lambda function, make sure that you don't have that function inside of the operator module. Why? Because again, these are named functions. You don't mess up your code with, I think you know that it's not beautiful at all. So we have a lot of functions. Of course, when we go to method caller and other getter, we have classes, but when we look at these lines, we have a lot of one-line functions. But that does not mean that you cannot use them, because they are in another module. And that's why, before you write any lambda function, make sure that you don't have that lambda operations inside of your operator module in Python. That's actually it. So yeah, that's all I wanted to tell you today. Again, you can use lambda functions because it's a very great tool in Python, a very great tool in almost every programming language, also in JS, if you know, like anonymous functions in JS, they are just awesome. But in Python, it's also a great tool. You can use them, but be sure that you don't overload your code with these lambda functions.